I think we've talked broadly about the overall strategic importance, and I hopefully for many of the folks listening, they learned a little bit more about Southern Command and its important responsibilities. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper now into your leadership and how you handle crisis. Um, you mentioned in your history yourself, you know, you you know when emergency crisis situations happen, it is very important to have a strong leadership in both yourself and as well as the team at the helm. You led the Army Reserve efforts during Hurricane Irma, I believe, and Maria. Can you talk a little bit about your how you as a leader handled managing a team, responding to crisis with imperfect information during that time, and perhaps how that might translate for others to think about how they can handle crisis as emerging leaders today?
Absolutely. Um, I arrived in Puerto Rico. I PCS'd to Puerto Rico 3 days before Irma Maria hit. My boss, a three-star, called me up and said, "Hey, I think you're going to have to cancel your change of command and go ahead and assume command now."
Hmm.
And so, as the senior federal officer in Puerto Rico and U.S. Virgin Islands, I proceeded to ask him what was going on, only to find out that we had hurricanes barreling down on us. What I did instantly is I brought in my most trusted leaders and explained to them what was going on. I tried to assess what was going on. I tried to get a common operating picture of what was going on. What do we have when it comes to people, equipment? How are we prepared? Uh, and then I looked at something as simple as we had water purification capability. And it would that capability, those trucks were actually on the side of the island that was going to be hit first in the least populated area. And so we decided to do something as simple as move them. We reached out and communicated with our entire team to make sure they knew what was going on, because we had 5,000 troops throughout the island of Puerto Rico and also in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So we tried to make sure that it was a transparent, common operating picture, and then I tried to explain to them what the purpose of our force was, because we had the engineers, the doctors, the water purification, the water sanitization, the civil affairs troops. So as we dealt with all these logistics capacity, engineers capacity, medical capacity, I tried to organize them and give them clear purpose of what was going to go on and how we were going to communicate with them as we thought at that time. And then I also empowered my team to really understand that I needed them to use disciplined initiative. But that was me as a leader explaining to them what the guidelines and the authorities we had under defense support to civil authorities. And then I took some prudent risk, and then also published orders as we did that. That's all part of mission command. But the interesting thing was, as I did this, and the hurricane hit, and 1,200 cell towers out of 1,600 were removed from the planet, just deleted, and nobody could move, and we became you couldn't go 100 feet without a massive tree being on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no means to communicate. I had a satellite phone, one of like four on the island at the time, and I actually had to go to an AM radio station through the water and speak in Spanish to my troops, for those that could hear on their AM radio stations in their vehicles and the like, of what to do, what was our plan. And so I made sure that the communication back to me was fluid, and I wanted people to know that their voice needed to be heard. At the same token, I needed to be direct with what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. And so we had everything from it became a cash only society, in the sense that there were no ATMs. So if you had cash in your pocket, you were great. But if you didn't, you were in a lot of trouble. Most all the gas stations were shut down. We had to
Mm,
mobilize and move out our engineers to start clearing roads and to start clearing the ports. It was a massive event, but the thing that encouraged me is that, once again, mission command. If you give people purpose and key tasks and an end state, and that they know that you're going to support them to do the right thing, um, they can do magic. And I will tell you that our service members in Puerto Rico constantly blew my mind with their exquisite skills.
that's incredible to hear, and definitely, I don't think a lot of people realize from an on the ground perspective how challenging it was to have operated in an environment where the entire infrastructure for communication, which is the linchpin of any effective organization, was taken away. Um,
Well, that and the power, the
right.
water. I mean, it was, and the most people don't even realize that probably 60 to 70% of my service members around the island did not have power restored to their homes for almost a
Mm,
year.
well,
I mean, that's absolutely unheard of. I mean, and the infrastructure that we had not been maintained as well. So, for example, we had the water tower on Fort Buchanan, and we had a water main break,
mm,
and so we lost all the fresh water.
yeah.
So, and once again, we had to use the rotc, which was part of our water purification unit, to then sanitize the water to make sure that people had something as simple as water.
Right. In that situation, well, I guess like lessons learned from that, in the year since. You mentioned, of course, the lack of communication, very few satellite capabilities. Do you feel the capacity to address these extreme weather events has improved or changed? Are we more resilient in terms of a force to deal with future extreme weather events as they continue to appear?
Uh, that's a double-edged question. So the answer is I absolutely think that we have absorbed a lot of the lessons learned and moved forward and really tried to make ourselves more resilient and more capable. We've learned. I mean,
Right.
this all first started, it was while I had previously worked at U.S. Northern Command, a lot of the exercises we did, we would stop when you hit a global pandemic. I
Mm,
think that the things that we learned, whether it was Hurricane Irma, Maria, or other things, enabled us. For example, that when we had the global pandemic and had to shut everything down, I'm not sure if you're tracking, but the Army Reserve, they mobilized 2,500 doctors to New York and throughout the country to help with COVID because 80% of the military's doctors are in the Army Reserve.
mm,
And we were able to do that. And it normally takes about a year to mobilize a reserve soldier. And we were able to do that in weeks. I mean, it was
yeah.
absolutely impressive. So yes, we're learning. The problem is that we need to continue to learn, continue to move forward, and ensure that policies and protocols are modified and maintained so they're more resilient and responsive. Sometimes, what I will tell you is there's a real challenge of we learn something the hard way and then we forget about it. We
Mm,
don't learn our lessons learned. I would tell you as a young uh, future officer, one of the things that you can do is AARs are great, but what's really magic is taking that AAR, all the lessons you've learned, and
mhm.
literally rewriting the op order for next year or next time with all your AAR comments in it and use that as your warno for the next time you go around. Because then you're a constantly growing organization. You're
Definitely.
you're a learning organization, and that's what you want to be. I don't want to repeat the same problems as a leader. I want
Right.
new problems. And so
Absolutely.
so how do we go, okay, that was pretty good, but these five things need to be fixed. and you put that into your plan, and then so you don't walk, your duty is not done when you just write a whole list of AAR comments. It's when you've literally, the historical documents have been updated and changed and modified, everything that you needed to do is done, then you are relieved of your burden, and you can move on and you can hand it to someone else and the next person that's going to do it the following year.